I'm Bob Markle, the town administrator.
Craig Rivas, selectman in town.
Crystal Virtue, Westfield Gas and Electric.
I'm Brian Sullivan, Westfield Gas and Electric, Whip City Fiber.
Katrina Fareder, Westfield Gas and Electric, Whip City Fiber.
Tom Flaherty, Westfield Gas and Electric, General Manager.
John Flasher, member of the board. My name is Russell, local resident, just interested in the process.
Well, we have an agenda, so next topic for discussion is design and engineering, and Chris Loretta is apparently going to speak to that.
So Chris, before we get into it, the point of me getting all you guys together with us in the committee is just to kind of answer questions. There's been a lot of questions going on in town, what's involved, cost, expenses, longevity. Is this the right way forward for the future? Is fiber going to be obsolete? So a lot of the committees to get together and just to hear your guys' presentation, like we did a couple weeks ago when we met up at your facility, we kind of went over things, just to kind of give a more of an expanded overview to the committee and some residents in town that just want to know what's going on and kind of see the process.
Okay. So if I could just jump in, what we did a couple of weeks ago for some of the folks was kind of a soup to nuts look at how to build an MLP network. And for you specifically in Hamden. Our experience has been extremely successful in doing this. We've worked with Hilltown, we've worked with West Springfield, we're working with a couple other towns right now. But our biggest success is our own town. We built this in Westfield as our own fiber network years ago and have now grown into the neighborhoods around us. And Hamden came up that was interested in looking at this. So we thought we would start with how to do it, what you need to do it, and then what you'll progress to have at the end of the day. It's easy to talk about we can build this so that we're the competition of your local provider today. But it's not just about that. It's actually ownership for the town of Hamden to have this in the residents' hands as the owner of the product at the end. And then how you work to get there, there's obviously financing involved. It's a long process, and that's what Chris is going to start out with is things like poll applications, literally going out and surveying every single telephone pole in the town, because that's where the fiber is going to be put. And then going into neighborhoods, and we actually have a map over here. We can leave you a copy of something like this, but literally breaking Hamden down into fiber neighborhoods on how strategically we would build this. From the most popular neighborhoods, and when I say that, it means the people who want it the most, to the outskirts, and as we build and grow it, that is the solution that Hamden wants to take.
How do you know who wants it that much?
That's going to be one of the things we touch on. We do a complete marketing scheme along with the town to actually identify, one, are you interested? Two, if you had it, would you take it? And then three, when do you want it? And again, we have historical data that'll show you how we did this. In Westfield, it was a really unique idea back in the day because we actually asked the residents to go online and say if they wanted it or not. And as that happened, it populated a map for the Whip City Fiber to identify not only do a lot of people want it, but there's neighborhoods that we could start building right now and get return on investment. And at the end of this, that's one thing that you're going to be looking at is the money that you put in versus the money that you're going to get out, and how do you become, at least equal, so that the town at the end is your own MLP, your own fiber producer, and you're managing it, you own it, you bill it, you expand it, you maintain it. But Whip City Fiber is going to be there to get you to the end product. And I think at the end of this, hopefully there's a lot of questions, and that's really how this starts. But we're going to show you some of the nuts and bolts on how to do that. And then questions at the end, or hey, stop us as we go, and please ask questions as we go that route. Turn over to Chris for the first part. There's a few parts that we have on the agenda.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so first off, there's the aspect of design and engineering. So obviously, we have preliminary information with regards to your assessor's information, your poles, what's physically in the town. You know, we have your assessor's information for building use, premise use, stuff like that. With regards to the pole applications, not so much. The pole information is owned by National Grid and Verizon. So it requires a little bit of time to survey the poles. And there's a process called a pole application process, which requires then make ready to build municipal space within the poles. Because the poles don't readily have that space allocated for a municipal network. So there's a whole process between pole applications, which is getting into an agreement with Eversource, which you guys are actually National Grid and Verizon. That process can take some time because there is some overarching requirements for construction, requirements for engineering time. There's requirements for what's going to physically happen to each pole, from either replacement or just simply moving cables and or electric systems in order to accommodate the municipal network on those poles. And that application process is probably the forefront of the process. It requires a long time to survey each of the poles, come up with an estimate of what we would assume is going to be the make ready for those poles, to give you kind of a game plan of what you can anticipate. And then from there, it's submitting those pole applications to the utilities and allowing them the time and processing requirements for them to generate what that cost is going to be for the town.
May I ask a question, please?
Please.
Regarding the poles, would Verizon and the electric company by any chance have an inventory of their poles that would contain some of this information we're looking for that would save us some time?
Yes, but working with them, we also try to also survey plant that may have been adjusted or changed that they may not have it. So it still requires somewhat of a survey, given the information we have from the utilities, but it's not all encompassing. And at times it can be varied depending on what's gone on for construction activity. So there's still some need for pole inspection in the process to make sure that when we're submitting these applications, one bad pole or one misnumbering doesn't throw the whole application out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I was gonna add, one of the benefits of working with us is we actually do a joint ride out with the community partners. And we actually have one of our retirees, their former linemen, and we meet with National Grid and Verizon to just talk about the cost and make sure if any make ready is not needed, then we work on an agreement with that. And we have saved thousands, I think actually $1 million, over $1 million with all the 19 other communities.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll actually, once we submit the pole application, they're gonna come back to us with an engineered plan of, it's gonna take X to replace the pole or X to adjust the existing facilities on the pole. We then will go out, we'll write out all of their suggestions and identify ones where we can actually peel those back because it is necessary plant maintenance, or the asset itself should have been replaced in the last 30 years or so. You know, so we will advocate for you throughout this whole pole application process to save costs for the town.
So are there
How
time
long
to these stages?
Is there what?
A time frame to the poll evaluation? Because they haven't been audited in decades. Right?
Decades, yeah.
And it's an ever evolving thing. So like you said, you have to look at them all.
Right.
I have a general idea, but
Yeah, that's the trickiest part. Obviously, it comes down to submitting the applications and then allowing them, I believe, what have we seen on average for most of these towns? At least 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9, so
collectively.
we will have someone from WG&E go out there and then collect the poll data and then submit. We will work with Hamden in establishing license agreements. And then once the poll applications are submitted, it's 6 to 9 months to get those make ready costs. You don't actually have to move forward with the make ready. You can still get those costs, but there is a cost to submit, which we'll go over. But then at that point, 6 to 9 months, and then once the town pays, then it goes into the queue for 6 to 12 months. We've even seen 18 months for the utilities to actually go out and do the work. I do have to say National Grid has been very responsive. We've built such a relationship with National Grid. The biggest unknown is Verizon. So that's the struggle, but we do have rapport where we're on weekly meetings with the utilities to go over application by application for updates.
Well, I've watched you guys in other towns, being in the business of telephones and VoIP technology, and I'm 10 years retired Verizon, so I know that Verizon system very well, and they are delayed. Getting them to do anything in 6 to 9 months is like pointy. So, but I commend you guys on how you guys have spread and worked with these outlying towns that expressed interest in this stuff and then succeeded, especially Westfield. You know, there are internet issues and that, like in anywhere, but you guys on a whole have really the competition that it was drastically needed for everybody to improve. I mean, you gotta come in at a certain level. And then once you're in, now the others have to respond to that level. And that all gives residents a better internet or a better, you know, infrastructure, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go
So
ahead.
the 6 to 9 months initial time to take for the application process, that's based off of the 41,000 people in Westfield, now being that Hamden is smaller than that. Is it safe to assume that it would take less than that, or is that not based on quantity?
Now, Westfield, we were in a special situation where Westfield Gas and Electric was the primary owner of half the poles. We had joint rights already. So we were able to attach in different spaces. So we were actually able to move forward a lot quicker. For West Springfield, we signed a contract with them last year in June. The ride out it was only for a small area. It had a 1,000 potential with PDUs or potential drop unit or homes. And that took our staff about 2.5 to 3 weeks to go out and get all the poll information, enter the poll information, and put the applications together. It took about, we had a meeting with West Springfield and Eversource. Verizon did not want to have a meeting like that. So then Eversource accepted our application or with, on behalf of West Springfield, I believe within a month after that. So Eversource, which is the equivalent of National Grid here, took about a total of 2 months for them to accept the application. Verizon took about a total of 5 months to accept the application. So not to keep throwing Verizon under the bus, but they're on their own time, and the utilities have. The electric utilities have responded a lot quicker because they have been under the watchful eye of the state regulatory bodies more so than the telephone utilities.
Who decides if a pole needs to be replaced? And is there a tendency there to mandate replacement when it may not be necessary?
The answer to that is the owner of the pole is the one that makes that decision. But as Katrine said, we actually send our people out with them so that we can fight on behalf of Hamden. And when they come in and say, well, that pole needs to be replaced, and we look and say, it does, but it needed replacing 25 years ago. So you're not going to do it on the backs of the fiber network. That one you own. You need to replace that one yourselves. Others, then we get to watch and they say, there's not enough space on this pole for the fiber. And we say, well, there is. If you move that line up or down, whatever happens, we can make that. So we'll fight on your behalf. But the answer to your question about that happens a lot. So they will want to replace poles on the network side as opposed to when
Poles they should have replaced over the years.
And they should have already replaced it. So we have experts that are in the street fighting that fight for you.
To give you an idea for Hamden, you have 1,880 poles here. You have, I think, just under 2,000 potential drop units, and which are homes or businesses and or municipal buildings. And so with that, I think, what is it, 67 miles over?
Yeah,
64.
64.2.
64, yeah. And then what's the underground?
7.1.
So for that information that we have, we can actually walk through today estimated cost of the full application process, estimated costs that we have from working with all of the towns here in Western Mass and in Westfield and moving forward in West Springfield of the make-ready costs. So you have basically a built-out idea of where the big number is, and then how you get to paying the bond with the big number before even using ARPA funds. And so we can run through that, and then maybe, as we go through, get to a stop point, answer any questions, and then continue through and then answer some more questions. Okay. Does that work?
Chair, can I jump in?
Go ahead.
This is Ted Zieber. For the folks who don't know me, I'm a concerned citizen, but also I'm representing the Conservation Commission. So for all those folks who don't know, any of the poles that they wind up replacing will have to be surveyed, and files will have to be filed if they're in the wetland or riverfront. And as everyone knows, we have a lot of that in town. So one of the processes that National Grid and everybody's going to have to go through is do the filing for all that. And I'm quite sure the people from Whip City know that. But that's one of the things that takes time. They don't get stopped. They're allowed to go through because it's, countrywide communications, but the paperwork still has to be filed and processed. And we have a lot of those in town.
We actually worked hand in hand with the Conservation Commission. The first term that comes to mind is Roe and Charlemont. So at the very beginning of the process, we engaged with the Conservation Commission. And even as Chris had mentioned, the undergrounds, prior to doing any underground work, we made sure the conservation approved of it.
Yeah, it's just one of the processes and paperworks and one of the things that makes it drag out.
Can also help with any changes that need to be made to solve any current problems.
Charlemont Road, what was your time frame, beginning to end, start to finish, start offering services? Charlemont, I would think it would, without looking at any totally ignorant of numbers, what I would think would be very similar to Hampton.
Actually, the closest one to you guys is actually our Beckett construction.
Yeah.
And that one, from a plant build perspective, it's a 2-year build. From a make-ready perspective, they're still doing make-ready as we speak while we're constructing. So we work hand in hand with the utilities as identified make-ready. The make-ready itself took 7 months to even get started because there was this glutton of work that just happened where it was a FIFO, first in, first out. The utility were bombarded with make-ready for both Comcast, Charter, and us within the towns throughout this Western Mass region.
Yes.
So there was a lot of coordination to tackle the towns that got their applications in first to then start the make-ready process. So that and us will be about a 3.5 year from start to finish a full application.
So we're looking
And I
at
know,
3 to 5
Bob, you're
years.
familiar with that.
Yeah, we were underway when I was there. So
Yeah. So they're still under construction and will be well into 2022 Q4. So.
And they have people that are already up and running too, so it's
Right.
an ongoing.
We currently are managing 4 town build-outs, the 4 final towns, including Beckett, Blanford, Charlemont, and Goshen. So those are our final 4. So as far as how things line up, it's a perfect opportunity from the West Springfield standpoint with their small pilot program, and also then leading into Hamden moving forward, especially for the contractor crews that we've been using.
Where do we get the network from? I mean, you guys aren't all in a town connected, so your bandwidth has to be gotten from somewhere. Would you-
I was gonna just say, in the bottom right-hand corner, it says where the MBI connections are. So we actually, the plumbing, in essence, is already there, so we would feed off of that.
Yeah,
So you already have the fiber connection. Go ahead.
Right, we'll leverage the mass broadband project that occurred back in 2012. And that will be the leverage to get you the backhaul back to the various providers.
Which is already feeding into
That
that
already
already today.
So, I don't know if you remember that, Russell. It was, what do you say, 2012? It was the Mass Broadband Initiative. It brought fiber through the state in different feeds and it kind of dead ended. we have fiber coming down Main Street to this building already from the 123
I
project.
missed that. Thanks.
So they would just tap into that. I think the only thing we would need is a substation, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, a fiber hut or a fiber
Yeah.
hub. So if you look at the town's map, if it's located here on this property or on the, fire department property, depending on, where it would be, I don't know, as far as the relationship is, like with the Hampton Regional District, the Thornton Burgess School, or in that area. So if you have it in that area where it spiders out, or this area where it spiders out, as the main substation or, hub. So we'll come right off the main transmission lines, right into that system, and then we run the feeders out from there.
And the main line runs into Federal Square, Springfield. Is that where the hub for the region is?
Yep. So it goes into one Fed, which is right by Stick in Springfield. And then it would also connect out on the other side. I'm not sure where the next point of interconnect is going out to Worcester. Out towards Worcester. Based on our proposal here today, you would have dual flow, so it's not just one direction. So you have a multi-directional flow. So if it goes off down on the other side, you'd have
So that's redundancy for.
redundancy and resiliency coming from the opposite direction.
And we have a good working relationship with Verizon. I know you also leverage them as a potential backhaul provider to completely segment the two providers so that from a resiliency standpoint, if MBI as a whole goes down, you would have the possibility of an additional backhaul provider that's separate from MBI.
And there's no worries about 2,000 drops. Let's say we get 1,000, 1,500 customers, all at 1 gig, all that speed is there, and can be up. can be
Right, so
down.
the main service, so once you get, upwards of 1,000 customers, you probably get a 2 gig, 2 to 3 gig feed coming into the hub to still supply the 1 gigabit feed to all the customers.
To the customers.
Right.
And just for point of clarification, the fiber speed, as opposed to say a coaxial, you're not gonna get that line loss by heavy demand, right?
Correct. Yeah, so it's just obviously the speed of light. So with fiber optics, it's light, their data traveling through light, and it's just unstoppable. The other upside is the downside. So if there is an outage and there wasn't a car accident or whatever, we actually have equipment that shines a light from the fiber hub down through the dead wire or whatever, and it shows you exactly how many feet from where you are following the same path
So you can
where the
map
outage is. So you can pinpoint it, say, okay, it's a half mile down, whatever, and then you get to that point, you find a break. So it really speeds up any outage.
And you can splice fiber.
Yep, that's how it is. Yeah, splice it, put Chris knows better than I, because we just had a small outage in Westfield over the weekend. So.
Yeah. So it was actually a pole fire, and unfortunately, cable loves to melt, especially when it gets warm. The splicing, we do
Is that a cable, coaxial cable?
no regular fiber optic.
Cable with fiber optic.
Glass cable. So we do a connectorized solution though at the tail end. So most of it is spliced, but then at the tail end from the customer to the home, we found it was more efficient to do a connectorized solution through a multi-service terminal, we call it. It actually is a connectorized solution that screws into the multi-service terminal, and that becomes kind of your sacrificial lamb. Say if for some reason a tree falls on that, it's not going to take down your full distribution plant. It's merely going to sever the customer from the plant.
Almost like a fused.
Yes, exactly. Just like a fuse in your home. or a
Now,
breaker in your home.
how deep away, what's your longest drop wire? What's your, like if a customer is 600 feet off the road, are you gonna drop wire that out to the pole, or how long is your longest drop wire?
So it's going to be dependent on the span lengths, because the physical drop has a limitation like anything.
Yep.
Manufacturer warranties it up to 180 feet. You go above that, you're starting to get into where the manufacturer is not going to warranty it. It could potentially break and fall down.
Sure.
So 180 feet is kind of your span length minimums. And then at that point, during the design and engineering phase, we would identify those pole spans, and then it would determine whether or not we're going to bring physical distribution plant from Camden's roadway demarc onto the customer premise.
And and that would be a customer installation cost, or would that be a town?
It would be based on how the town wants to go about it. So we've seen it where the town applies those extension costs to the customer. We've seen it where the town as a whole absorbs all the distribution costs, and then from there, the service cost gets allocated.
Well, that should be explained thoroughly on the
Yeah.
tech rate if you want to really.
Yeah,
ensure the
for quite a few towns in the hill towns, what they did was they allotted, either 500 or 1,000 or $2,000 to each drop cost, and anything over that, the customer had to pick up. So, like underground costs are a lot more expensive than the overhead costs,
Absolutely.
unless there's conduit there. If they already have conduit that you can, pull through, and especially if it has a pull cord in it already, that's a dream come true. However, it's not always the case, and, but we'll go out, we'll do an estimate of what the cost is, and then typically we'll go back to the MLP and say, okay, this address, it's gonna be, a couple hundred feet, it's all needs to be, direct buried or wet trench through, and, micro conduit, et cetera. This is what the cost is. It's gonna be up to the town to decide, okay, we'll cover $500, and the customer needs to cover.
That's
the
key, Craig. Pay attention to that.
Well, that would be the span from the road
Well,
to
this
that.
would be people's house off the road.
Mhm.
Like if you okay 500 feet and 10% of the 1,500 that take this are beyond that, they're gonna, the installation cost could really spiral up, I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of construction is expensive.
But they're also gonna know that because when they built the house, or, whoever built the house, to get the service there for the electric side or cable or any other service of the house, that's the price you have to pay for the luxury of living so far up the road.
One of the real big important things to remember is that you guys own what you're talking about. So it's an MLP board that's gonna make that decision on what those costs are gonna be, as opposed to a company coming in and saying, here's our number, take it or leave it. You're gonna be able to justify to the homeowner what that cost is. And every town is the same way that we're working with now, like Tom mentioned. Some have stipends that are bigger than others, and it's just the geographical layout of the town itself, where that falls into what people are comfortable with.
And not to get into the minutia, but through us, you can do on the bill financing or anything like that. So if it's $1,200, you can do, okay, it's $100 a month. If you want to try to cover that cost.
So in Beacon, we allocated a standard fee. Was it $400? That would take care of just about anybody except those who had very long driveways.
That's right.
And then they would have to pay an increment of the cost.
They actually went up to $2,000 at one point.
Oh, they did?
Yes, so anything above $2,000, including network extensions. So they would build the network extensions, they would add the network extensions in to the cost to the customer, and whatever was above 2,000, that's what the customer's increment was.
Now, our town meeting in the fall passed the MLP article on the warrant unanimously. So I think we have some confidence that the second step will pass in the spring. Are we in any way restrained from taking any steps forward until the MLP is approved?
You are not. West Springfield did the same. So West Springfield, they're a town council or city council in a mayor format. So they have to go through a townwide vote, which they're going to have go to election this fall. So they had to have 2 votes of the city council, one last year, one this year, and then a full vote for years. And then in the meantime, what they did was they created an enterprise fund, which you're not going to have to do because of the full timing here. But with them, they were able to create an enterprise fund and go ahead. So they've already done all the poll application process for the 4 fiber service areas, for the 4 neighborhoods that they're looking to do as a pilot, while their process is ongoing. But for here, if we go through and tell you what the full application process is, we can start that process for you. We can go out, we can do the write-outs and the full design through the GIS program, and batch all the applications up to then start the process with Verizon and National Grid. And you'll know ahead of time, Chris, what was the total full application process?
Time or cost?
Fees.
Fees, that would be the make ready, so that's with an estimate of, a conservative estimate of $750 per pole, assuming 100% of them are gonna need some sort of work. Through National Grid, you're looking at about 124,000 for the application and fees. That's prior to them assessing and then providing a cost for the physical make ready.
Are the other towns that you're working with planning to use ARPA or are using ARPA funds?
They're doing in different ways. So West Springfield wanted to, at first, they would just want to do it on their own, as their own, additional service to the community. I think now at this point, they're looking to apply some ARPA funds that they're not going to be able to apply to other areas based on the rules of how you have to spend the funds. So West Springfield will be looking at that. We have been in discussions with Falmouth down at the Cape, and they're hoping to use some ARPA funds through this process as well as Sheffield. Everyone's looking at that opportunity.
Yeah.
But depending on the size of the community, and you look at it, Sheffield that's significantly smaller, they might not have what it takes to spend the money on. So this might move their broadband program further along.
Yeah, and a lot of towns that were under construction, those are came in handy. Towns that have already completed construction, they have to leverage it in a different manner. Yeah, and then the all-in estimate for make ready is, it's not a small number, because we do make some general assumptions. So make ready itself is still estimated at 1.6. The total pole application fees by themselves, that's 124 National Grid, you're talking 24,000 Verizon, and then to submit and everything, it's another 70,000 for our services as well. So
So it's at 200,
just over 250,000.
Remember the email you sent me about 20 to 30,000, I gave out 200,000 estimate, that's that estimate for the poll applications.
and then that 750 is conservative. That's putting kind of a generic,
750 per pole, so 750 times the 1880.
and that's kind of the average we saw across the other towns. But as we mentioned, we advocate on your behalf to cut that number down as often as possible.
And when we walk through it, start to finish, from batching the polls to submitting it to National Grid and Verizon. Verizon, they do like electronic payments, so we work with all the town's treasurers to submit the applications via the portal. And then we do have an engineer and an administrative assistant that monitors all the poll applications, so you can see where they stand, when the license was received, and everything. But start to finish, we really handhold throughout the process.
And then once the poll application process is complete, then you get into really your construction design. There's a lot that has to go into it from a residential standpoint of reviewing to make sure all of your PDUs are accounted for, to address any potential MDUs, and also address any
Multi-dwelling.
Yes.
multi-dwelling units. I apologize, I acronym a lot. He always tries to remind me, so I apologize for that. And then also any premises where maybe it's a master metered electric, but you have multiple customers living in it, a 2 to 3 to 4 family establishment. I'm not fairly certain that you guys have a ton of those, but you definitely know.
Do you have a housing authority here or anything like that?
Yeah, we do.
All right, so those are.
Multifamily is limited, but we do have a housing authority. We've got a nursing facility.
Assessed.
Yeah. Are you on the state bid list?
Are we on the physical state bid list?
Yes.
Don't believe so. How we've done all our work with the 20 communities so far is through an IGA, or an intergovernmental agreement. So MLP to MLP, because we're through Chapter 164, we can do a contract together without going out to bid. So then what we do for that process is we manage all aspects of the process for you, from procurement. Every piece of procurement goes out to bid through Chapter 30B.
Yeah.
We follow all the 30B procurements on your behalf and go through each aspect. We handle all materials. All materials are stored in Westfield. Until we might have a couple job boxes located out here. where the contract crews can go to and, out of a large container and grab equipment that they need for that day, or we can drop it off, ahead of time for that week's work, so they're not coming, back and forth from Hampton to Westfield. So everything actually worked out seamlessly. So from, whatever term you want to put to it, soup to nuts, we manage the whole process through on the community's behalf or for the MLP's behalf. And everything is transparent, wide open. That's why you see with this piece here, we want to lay out every aspect of the cost of the best estimates based on the information we have.
Once the build is complete, do you contract with towns to maintain the system?
Yep, typically, so what we did with West Springfield is one contract from everything all the way to internet service provider, network operator. So what that means is we go out, we do the whole application process, we do the design, we oversee the build and construction, obviously going through the procurement processes for each piece, manage the procurement process. So for our build for 2023, we actually bought our materials back in September, October of last year for 2023, because that's part of the other issue right now is supply chain. So global supply chain is extremely delayed for everything. It's not just for the auto industry with microchips. It's for every aspect of piece of equipment out there. So
Electronics are killing us.
what's that?
Electronics are killing us.
Yep, so for any of that equipment, we're doing some reliability stuff in the hill towns right now. Primary equipment that we use is we try to use all name brand equipment. So our main piece is Nokia, we do Nokia and Cisco. And the Nokia equipment is, what was it, about 6 months?
Yeah.
4 to 6 month lead time for a switch. And but all of that is planned out ahead of time. So as Gina asked before, make ready's happening or whatever, we're already planning the next step. So if it's a 52-week lead time, we're planning that today while the application process is going on, and we're buying it now for it to be in a year or a year and a half or whatever construction is going to be.
And that's why that engineering and design phase is key to get started once we've identified, at least get through the whole application process, which can take place at the same time as the design and engineering. So, because the design is based on exactly what the footprint is, what the whole footprint is, what your customer premises look like. So it's a lot of data collection on the upfront. And then from there, it will generate a physical design that can then be procured against for contract labor, which we will follow 3039M on behalf of the town as per Mass General Law.
And all the mapping will be overlaid right onto the GIS system. So everything is it's tracked. Every piece of equipment is marked as well out there, from the multi-service terminals to.
There's no question where it is.
That's it. Yeah, so exactly where the box is. So if there is a concern or a problem, we have to go out and service something. We have everything marked already in the GIS system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sending people right out to.
How much variation you call it the take rate, or?
Yep.
How much variation is there? Is there a socioeconomic factor?
There is and there isn't. So right now, the way that we did the build out in Westfield, we did a bond. Westfield Genie itself had invested about $6 million of our own money. We did some internal borrowing that we're paying off through a similar bond rate. And then we did a large bond of $15 million. In that structure, right now, that got us to serve 70% potential for the town. Our take rate as far as payback on investment in the business plan was about 30%. So if we hit 30%, that was our break even. Right now in Westfield, our take rate is right around 50%. We're continuing to build out right now. We're building out, I believe, we're in the middle of a 12 to 13% build out, which is costing us approximately $2 million from last April to this April. And our next build out will be about a $3.5 million build out from April of 22 to 23. But through as it goes right now, we're doing, as far as socioeconomic, we're doing 3 three neighborhoods in our downtown section that I guess would fall under lower income. And some of the problems that we run into, because we have Westfield State University, we have a lot of 2-family, 3-family rentals that are going to college kids. But they love it because they're only living on data right now. They're not, none of them are on cable. So, but the take rates in those areas, I want to say right now are about 45%. So, and that's all new customers coming on.
In all various different systems, to 30% is your about average of the break-even point?
I would say here, the break even would probably be around 36 to 37%. I don't, it's
On this paper here, I'm just looking at what you provided us for, you got West Springfield listed here. I'm assuming you mean Hamden.
oh, hang on, did I not correct all the
Everything
pieces?
says Hamden, but just one said West Springfield. I'm assuming that's supposed to say Hamden.
Yeah.
But it says here, number of customers needed to debt service the payment would be 814. So that'd be a break even, 814 customers out of a potential 1990.
Oh, yeah, yep. So that's based on a cost of $84.
Yeah. So that's less than 50%.
Per month. Correct. So if you go down below, the other benefit of having a municipal service like this is non-tax revenue while you're providing a high quality service. So at the 50% take rate, that gave you an additional 181 customers. So that was an additional $10,000 per month of non-tax revenue, which came out at the end of the year to, based on this estimate at $123,000
Of non-tax revenue.
non-tax revenue.
And we do marketing events to educate, so if people are hesitant, we're on site, we can do Saturdays, we can do evenings at the library, wherever, and then we just show, we'll talk one-on-one. Why don't you want to move forward? Oh, it's streaming, you have to get your sports, then we'll walk through that, and then we do provide a phone service, but we really want to talk about the local and then be on site, so you know that we're your partners. So we'll schedule as many as you see fit, and then we always see even the towns that we leave, suddenly someone's coming to your house and you're ready to make that move. So we always have crews in the area to hook you right up. But we're here to market because we want you to succeed.
So just
What would
looking
you
at
say
this,
to a resident who said, look, we're going to spend a lot of money here, but in 3 or 5 years, some new technology is going to appear that will supersede what we've done, and we're stuck with a significant debt.
The upside to the fiber, so right now, the goal speed is 1 gigabit or 1,000 megabits per second. So if you run speed test here, I know when we talked a few months ago, it was 5 to 10 megabits per second here.
Mhm.
So when you look at, for the same price, you're able, or I was talking to my nephew who was up the street, and he's like, I pay $85 just for internet. And I'm like, well, the upside is that's about the same. And he's like, yeah, but my, for lack of a better term, my internet sucks for the direct quote. And I said, yeah, but this is going to be upwards of 40 times faster than what you have now. And he's like, okay, sign me up.
like for example, I'm paying just under $100 for internet. I'm paying for the high speed through Spectrum, 400 down, 20 up.
And that's what your speed is now, and then speed test, or that's what you're paying?
That's what I'm paying for.
Okay, and what are you getting?
Up like 380 down,
Oh, okay, that's
maybe
good.
15 to 18 up.
Yep,
But with fiber, it's match speeds, right? Up and down.
yep.
And then you're, rather than paying an investor-owned utility, you're reinvesting in the town of Hamden, so then you're putting back into your community.
Right. So you're thinking if we did a 50% take rate, we'd be net positive.
Correct.
Well, the other issue here too, correct me if I'm wrong, but fiber uses light. So we're talking about light speed, correct? Yeah. I mean, the only thing I know faster than that was on Spaceballs when they went to ludicrous speed. So I don't think we're going to get any faster than light speed in the foreseeable future.
What
But
can
I'm
fiber
sorry,
handle?
Craig, what I was getting at is right now you're set up for 1G, but that speed can be adjusted up in the future if there's a greater demand.
So
for it.
what can fiber handle for speeds? So say 10 years down the road, 1 gig internet is kind of like, oh,
That's so
Slow,
passe.
yeah. What can fiber handle?
The current plan can handle up to 10.
10 gig.
Current fiber that's being manufactured today can handle
So
up to 10.
hypothetically speaking, the 5G networks are going in. They're claiming, I think they're claiming close to gig speed. Am I mistaken with that?
That's
Yeah,
how
they're
far
claiming
you are
most of
from
it.
the antenna. my friend.
What's that? Well,
How far
well,
you
yeah,
are from
5G
the
needs
antenna.
sensitive antenna.
Distance sensitive.
How fast can wireless data transmit? Do you guys have that reference off here?
I think it's all the distance.
No, it's upgrading every day though. I mean, 6G is gonna be better,
But will
but
it?
you know,
The likelihood of saturating a town like Hamden in the time frame that you guys would be building out your fiber network is probably low.
Nothing's better than building a direct connectivity to the home.
Correct, yeah,
Also,
point-to-point
it-
access is
you-
definitely
you've
better than
eliminated that
anything.
distance. You now
Something
built
between
right
us.
to there,
That,
right to the premise.
I guess ask a question back. When is the last time Spectrum did an upgrade to their system here?
Jeez.
Okay.
the other day, I'm working.
I had the same,
That's point-to-point contact.
or even Verizon.
Yeah.
I had the same, you see all the Verizon Fios commercials and stuff like that, and you call up and you're like, they kind of laugh at you, no, we're not in that area. Otis had the same question. He's like, I only want to do a 2-year contract because what if the next best thing comes along? And I'm like, hang on a second. Literally last year you had dial-up and we're getting 3 megabits per second. Who's going to come in and invest, $5 million, $6 million in your community to try to steal the customers that you have for just a little bit more speed?
I think that's the point, because I think our contract with Charter is up next year, if I remember correctly. But to try to get a competing service to take over their network, I think is probably slim.
Yeah, no one's
It's
gonna-
wishful
no one's-
thinking.
No one's
Nobody's
gonna
gonna
want
take
the
it.
old architecture.
But then it was interesting, we did the Westwood building, 94
Yeah.
North Elm. The landlord covered Wi-Fi for everyone, and then each business actually wanted a safe connection, a secure connection, so they didn't even use the public Wi-Fi, and they're paying for a monthly service. So that was a free added benefit, and they don't even want it, which it was interesting to see
Well,
that.
one of the things that concerns me, okay, so if we have 1990 or 2000 takes, and let's say we get 5% and we're running the profit. So now we got 1,000 homes clocking 1 gig. Now, all of them are not, if all of them hit speed test at the same time, we're obviously not gonna get 1,000 times 1 gig of speed into the town of Hamden. And that's what worries me, like, you're only as fast as your weakest link. So if we've got 1,000 people linking with the fiber equipment saying 1 gig speed, but what is that bottleneck once we hit this fiber network over at Federal? I mean, Federal's only got so much that it then distributes. Now, so how does this come to Hamden? Does it from Federal Street? Do we connect to an East Long Meadow fiber that's already there? Or do we tap in at the Verizon building here in town? Or how do we get to Federal Street from here? And that bottleneck, in my experience, has been the root of all evil. When you speak of a multi-dwelling unit person that gives Wi-Fi, I have 4 of those customers right now. Every customer screams because they're sharing and they're all taking. So, I mean, each one is trying to get 50 meg and there's 10 of them and he's got a 200 megabit connection. It's just not going to happen. So that's my concern as to, the technical end of it.
But in that scenario, they're taking it wirelessly off 1 unit when they should have 4 units in that service.
Understood. But even so, all of those, all the bandwidth that Craig and I are gonna pull from Hamden when we're using our stuff has a draw, and that draw has a bottleneck at some point.
So currently, we monitor with all the towns, so let's just say, because we build fiber service area by fiber service area, so you might only need 1 gig when you have 200, 300 customers. But we monitor through SolarWinds, so we'll approach the town and say, you're at your peak level. Do you want to upgrade to 2 gig? Do you want to upgrade to 3 gig?
But where does that 3 gig, who does that 3 gig come from? I mean, if it's on the mass network,
It comes through the transmission system.
okay,
But if Wilbraham signs up and Hamden signs up and East Long Meadow and Long Meadow and Union, and they're all getting fed off the same, like Chris just said, you can go by a multiplier of 10 and ramp up the data capability and the speed capability through that transmission system as well.
Right.
So that's where that comes from. You have extremely limited capability to do that through coax, or a hybrid system, of fiber to coax.
I think what Russell's trying to ask is with coaxial, from point A to point B, if we have 10 people on from between point A to point B, if everybody's using the max at their house, you're gonna see the bandwidth drop,
The big sucking.
the big suck down. With fiber, if you have from point A to point B and everybody's trying to draw the max, will you still see a slowdown in fiber optic internet because of the draw? Is it gonna suck it down? Or is it gonna be, on demand? Is it always gonna be there?
It's always gonna be based on what your backhaul is allowing.
Right.
You're gonna always wanna have headroom. And that's what the current coaxial system doesn't take into account, which we would assist you to better manage your backhaul, to provide that headroom where if you had a burst of customers coming on at 5 o'clock, that head wall is enough to where nobody would see any degradation of service and or any other limitations.
Yeah, and fiber definitely has the best results on the subject, Dave, no doubt about that.
What about Verizon? I know we have Charter, but I'm sorry, Comcast. They're imposing data limits, data caps. And if you
That's
hit a
what
certain
started
thing,
West Springfield in this.
what's that?
That's what started West Springfield.
Right, so their customers now are gonna get, okay, once you hit this threshold, we have to start charging you more.
Right.
Will that ever happen with fiber?
Or we throttle you down.
Or, yeah, or will they get throttled?
We have not imposed any throttling, nor has any other town.
The only time that there's a risk of incapability, and this is on your behalf, that we throttle down a customer, is if they haven't paid their bill.
Mhm.
And they have either, lifeline need, for a backup telephone. In the hill towns, it's different than here, because you have a cell phone signal. Many of the hill towns
Right.
don't have a cell phone signal. So you can't take that lifeline of their phone away. So you can crank it, it's like, okay, here's that service address. They owe $300 on their bill, they're 3-4 months behind. You can crank them back down so that they're still able to use their phone, but they just get the spinny thing.
What is that, IP based?
What's that?
Is that IP based?
Yeah.
And actually, we have
We're
seen,
coming up on an hour. You have more presentations. We
Sorry.
probably ought to get through it and then we can keep talking.
yeah, and we actually dealt with some of the.
Hello. You mind if I make just, this is Eric Vander. Do you mind if I make just one point stemming on the speeds? When it comes to charter, and we're talking about fiber optic in the future and bottlenecks, where are we going to be if we don't switch? That's where my concern is. We're already complaining about the bottleneck now, and I'm one of the residents who've cut the cable, cut the cord, if you will, and I just stream everything. Where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years, or when that bottleneck occurs when we have our current infrastructure with coaxial? That's my bigger concern. I think that's kind of just one of my points I wanted to make when I was kind of listening, is that this is kind of an advantage to fiber. I'd rather be in that situation with fiber than bottlenecking where we currently are now, when it's only going to get worse.
Yes, I agree. And also for you guys as a whole, because it's your infrastructure, reinvesting into your infrastructure to alleviate those bottlenecks is easier because you own the plant. You own the physical infrastructure to benefit your customers, that if you run into a bottleneck, you expand your abilities through your routers, through your OLT, to then provide those customers the alleviation of that bottleneck. Whereas right now, you don't have the control over Charter. You can't just tell them, come in and replace everything, and
Well, we can in a year and a half.
even then,
The problem.
They're
you're
not
talking
gonna do
about-
that when they start losing the customer. They're just gonna say, all right, it's not.
And as to Eric's question, more people are there's more places that are coming online to alleviate the suck that he's talking about. So it's gonna come, it's gonna go, and there is no question that fiber is your best option when others aren't even offering it. I mean, there's no way you're gonna offer a two-way speed like you're offering through Verizon at the moment, or Spectrum. You're not gonna.
You have to understand too, the topic that you're talking about right now is basically the success of what you're building. So if you're getting to the point where
right?
you need to upgrade, that means a whole lot of people in town all jump on this at the right time.
Good point.
Which in turn return on investment is now saying,
More capital.
more of us want to go there. You now have the resources to upgrade that more, and you're in control of that, as opposed to somebody else saying, no, we're gonna shut you down and we're gonna ratchet you down and you're gonna charge more. You guys, if you're talking about slowdown, that means what success you're having locally because people are jumping on it. So I mean, that's a problem of your success.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have.
And the other piece of this in Comcast and Westfield, every year they go up, no matter what, every January 1st, $10 to $15. You get to control cost on behalf of what become your ratepayers. And realistically, you know, from the MLP standpoint, you know, we've been an MLP since 1880 something, right? So, you know, we've been in there, but we're fully owned by our ratepayers. That's who I, you know, eventually report to the board, and then the board goes out to the citizens and the ratepayers. So at the end of the day, if you're able to stabilize $85 a month, or you know, or whatever price you choose to do, you know, and if you're doing extremely well, you can say, okay, you get a free month, or you can do whatever, or to incentivize, you know, people. And still in Westfield, we do, you know, the first month free. The other upside for that for us is if there happens to be, you know, especially if it's an underground, if there's some kink or something that's wrong, that's when it's going to happen. You're going to, you know, have something, you know, go wrong in the initial start. So it's like, okay, yep, we'll go out, we fix it. That being said, you know, Bob, as far as moving along, if you go back to, you know, this page, so between the full application process and the make ready, our estimation is about 1.66 million for that on the 1,880 poles. Engineering, design, and field services, just looking at the total number, that's another $178,000. You know, the construction piece, the total construction, total build out, you're looking at $3.6 million. Total program management, which is also part of where we get paid. We get paid basically our general contractor fee is 10%. Which in this comes out to of the construction cost, not of the other fees. So it's $363,000, and then the total overall everything project cost, which includes your fiber hub and all the networking connections, it's just over $5.9 million. That all being said, depending on how you decide as you know, the select board and then becoming the MLP, whether you start off with the MLP being from the select board or a member from the select board.
I was going to ask that question, that the selectmen are probably going to start thinking about an MLP.
Yep.
What kind of skills, or what do you recommend? What are the other towns doing for an MLP? I know if we
My
did.
guess is, Bob, listening to some of the questions you have, my guess is you have residents right now that are interested in this topic and
Yeah.
astute on how to build, whether they're financial
Right.
or technical or whatever, but that's really is what makes up an MLP board,
Mhm.
is those that have an interest, obviously, and then something they bring to the table that would assist the board of selectmen in making those decisions. It's totally up to the town on how that works. Some are elected, some are appointed, but they report, you know, basically to the board of selectmen. And own the net, where they make all the decisions on how the network.
Have you seen an MLP be an elected board, or is it more usually an appointed board?
In Westfield, so we have 6 wards throughout the city. So we have 1 representative from each ward, and the 7th representative is a mayoral appointee approved by the city council. So it's 7 people. The one aspect that's an odd piece, because it's a political position that gets paid $7,500 a year and also receives health benefits through the city. Just that's the way that Westfield works with that position. But that individual that's the mayoral appointee has been the same appointee for the last 5 mayors. So he's you know, CPA, he was chief financial officer for a couple businesses, but he adds a great deal to that board. I was a member of that board for 17 years. I have 25 years of utility experience. So I lent that to the board. We have another attorney. We have a couple local people that are extremely involved in the community that literally know every person in Westfield is a town of or a city of 43,000 people, but everybody knows everybody, and if not, you're typically somehow related. It's a weird, I moved to Westfield.
We won't go there.
No, I moved there 20 years ago, and somehow my wife's related to half of Westfield, and she didn't even know it, so it's kind of a weird thing, but.
Remember too, Westfield is unique in that because by charter, our MLP was started with the gas and electric.
Yeah.
Hamden's not going to be gas and electric, it's just
No.
going to be a fiber.
But I would, structure it to, whether it's appointed by the select board or, suggested by the town manager to the select board. You can always change it, but if you have a representative from the select board who's extremely active, or you're gonna be at those meetings anyway, you might as well have, some skin in the game there so you can have direction provided to what's happening. The upside again for the MLP is Whip City Fiber, Westfield Gas and Electric does 95% of the lift. So we do all the billing, we do all the servicing, we do all the customer service, the tech customer service. We oversee, the soup to nuts from.
The customers will be paying you.
No, so we send the bill out on your behalf. What we've done for the Hilltowns, any payment, whether it's an ACH payment or a credit card payment, comes directly to a MLP account. Okay. So we don't touch your money.
And that's part of that processing fee that you had listed earlier? Is that what that, part of that?
On the bond one.
490,000?
This one is on the bond one, so
On
that's
the
part
bond
of
one.
our monthly
Yeah, so
subscriber fee.
the
Okay.
$28 is the fee.
So that handles all the legwork, paperwork.
Correct.
We collect the payments, we
Yep.
do all the
And then
catch
we
ups.
bill- and then we bill you, and then we'll bill you. We've had some incidents where there's a car accident or whatever, we need to send a crew out.
Mhm.
So then we are all hands on deck, we'll go out, and then that would be on your monthly
Okay.
bill.
Right, so if it's overtime, you're getting charged
Obviously, we'd have
the
to be
X
responsible
dollar
for
fee.
repairing the infrastructure.
Yep.
But then,
And then the storm response, so the insurance and those costs, that are, plus the cost of the physical MBI connection, that's what you're looking at, it's $75,000 a year.
Okay.
But you don't work with a board in most, if I recall in Beckett, there might have been a board, but it was one point guy, Bob Gross, I think.
Yep.
isn't it?
Yep.
so
He's still there, is he still the point
He's
guy?
the chairman of the ML.
Oh, he's chairman of the board, but that's the guy who I thought worked with Whip City.
Yeah, he's also the chairman of the MLP.
I see.
So there is a group.
Yep.
That Bob, but he's the
Yeah,
appointed
okay.
person.
Yeah.
It would depend on how you want to structure it. Some towns have done a separate MLP board,
Mhm.
and they can make the decisions on what happens with the actual MLP themselves. Other towns have done an enterprise funding where the select board makes all the decisions on how that funding is going to be used or how the MLP board is directed to actually proceed. So two different structures, however you want to structure it. However best applies.
Something that doesn't need to be thought of right this second.
Right.
No.
I would personally, start off as the select board as the MLP, that might be the easiest part. And then with the guidance from the town manager, just to, as you get through, and then maybe, if the full build out takes up to, 3 years or 3.5 years to fully happen here, then at that point, you'll have, your shoes underneath you, and you'll have a good idea of, all right, now we're fully operational. Now we can really, be a more robust bus board, board, whether you're meeting quarterly or monthly, and then how your payments are processed through the city's account.
And I think we already touched on monitoring. We do 24/7 monitoring of all the systems and networks for all the towns at this time. So it'd be the same for Hamden. And then with regards to physical equipment for the network, that would be all housed in that fiber hub. And as Tom mentioned, we partnered with Nokia, which was Alcatel-Lucent prior to, and they are a excellent service provider and professional service provider for us to allow for robust physical network equipment.
Yeah, so just so you have an idea, this is a sample layout of of how Hamden will look. So each color here is a different fiber service area. Right now, our initial plan for Hamden is 9 fiber service areas. That may change based on potential developments. So you want to be able to have ample space in each switch. Each Nokia switch has 288 ports.
256 per line card, and it's up to 8 line cards.
Okay, so in that respect, you want to try to limit each fiber service area to about 250. Typically, that's what we have done for Westfield, so that if there are any new, if there is any new construction happening, you can then have an open port for them to go into for that particular area. So you can see here, I think you have a map there, Bob, but you know, that's here too. But, so you have the breakout. It gives you an idea. Our initial thought process is for, and I know you're kind of landlocked with this property, but it's a what's it, 9 by 16?
Yes, 10 by 16.
10 by 16 concrete hub. You know, so it's all precast. It has all the equipment that needs to come into it as far as sensors and monitoring, and then also the backup generator that would go.
It's like the one you showed us on the ground.
Yeah. So but probably 1/5.
Yeah,
the
it's
size of what
smaller
you
than
saw
that
from
one.
Westfield.
Yeah.
But yeah, the same thing. So you'd have the generator set up outside. You'd have alarm monitoring, security monitoring on that. But it's really just a simple thing that you put in the back of the parking lot.
Similar to the base of any cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Thanks for cutting.
We only need one of those, right? In town, we don't need one for every service
Yeah,
area.
for the size here, it's just one. Okay. So what Westfield, just, we have 100 FSAs and, or just under 100-ish, 99. So we have 3.
Okay.
Set up that also backfeed to each other as well for redundancy.
For these service areas, is this the order you would do with them, you think, or would it be
No.
on take rate?
No, what we would recommend is based on take rate, have a marketing plan, which again, we assist you with. And we go through a marketing plan where customers can go on to, I think there's a sample webpage there of www.whipcityfiber.com/Hamden.
Yeah.
So the customers will go to there. There would be this map on that page. They would be able to click on that map, type in their street, and you'd be able to have a running tally of what's available. And basically you can hit the highest take rate.
Right, start with the most customers first.
So then, once you sign them up, once that FSA is released, so what happens is it's constructed, we then do all the testing on it to make sure that everything, lines up. Then we open it up for appointments, we do all the scheduling and everything internally for you. Then we go out and do all the work, and our scheduling for installations, it's what we've found, instead of trying to get 3 into a day or 4 into a day, just in case you run into any hiccups, we only schedule 2 a day per install. So right now we've been running about 10 to 12 installers, so we're getting 20 to 24 installations a day.
Pretty good.
And that's through right now 5 towns, including Westfield.
Are they all owned by you, or do you contract out? Like Tri-Wire?
Primarily contracted out, yeah. So Tri-Wire has now become ITG. So they do most of our jobs.
And then think about it from a standpoint, we try to separate ourselves a little bit from the Comcast and Spectrum, not drilling through your floors and just plumbing up through the floor. We really try to take pride in the product that you're giving to the customer. So there's a lot of wall fishing, stuff like that. It really sets the bar apart from, and also hardwiring is by nature more dependable than, jumpers and stuff like that.
And then for those folks that have undergrounds, then we'll walk through that process. And we have it down to a T for the consultation to the actual construction to hooking, activating their service.
Now, once a customer decides they want fiber and they're not quite sure how to set it up, do everything, I believe you told us that routers are rented through you guys?
Provided in the $28 per month, and
Okay.
then there's no additional cost, no taxes or fees, only on the phones. So the benefit of working with our routers is we can actually go in and troubleshoot.
Yeah.
And then we can see if there's an issue, we can see exactly how many devices are hooked up. And then we're also working with Intelify and Plumes. So if you have a family of 5 kids, they've got their smartphone, their
Yeah.
Apple, whatever they have, then you can actually use the Plumes.
Like a
put
mesh
it-
network?
Yeah, the mesh network. So we've just been introducing
Yeah, I
that.
think you have that at your house.
Yeah, yeah, well,
So if you're in an old
Like
house.
an older house,
Yeah,
and you need the coverage.
plaster
Yeah.
internal walls, things like that. We've set that up and run into that a lot in the hill towns. There are, additional costs to that, we pass it through to you at cost. And if the MLP decides they want to put it, $1 per unit or something like that, it gives you a little extra piece.
The normal cost to the consumer, the client, they're getting a modem and a router at that price?
That's correct.
And there's not an option for a user provided solution?
Oh, there is an option for user provided solution. Obviously, that has its ups and downs, from a standpoint of not being able to control the ability.
Right, support.
So say you have somebody that's very tech savvy and they want to go with their own,
Here's
say
your Ethernet.
Google or Arlo or whatever you have. Is there a reduced rate that they would pay by not renting or not, or
No.
still?
No, 'cause
Okay.
that's totally separate.
Okay.
No.
Does
They just won't pay the $26 a month.
No, they would still pay, they would still have the full rate. The routers are not rented to the town. We own the router's assets, so we'll be in charge of upgrading them, everything. So it's really just an all-inclusive, you're paying for that 1 gig symmetrical connection.
So Spectrum right now, I just moved my son to Connecticut 2 weeks ago, and I told them to buy their own router because Spectrum was gonna charge them $15.99 a month for the wireless router. So they went and bought their own router for $50-60. So in 4 months, they get paid back, and it's also theirs. But in this situation, if you're looking to save on cost, there is no cost savings because we provide it. It's part of our package. But we
It's
don't
pretty much
change, we don't change
a
the
free
price.
piece of hardware, use it
Yeah.
or not.
Yep. And we upgrade, I think, the useful life on it it's up to 7 years. If everything's working fine and everything's moving through, we're not gonna change it out, but if it fails or we see a fail rate, then we'll change out everything.
And
Does
also-
Westfield State University take the service?
They have a couple of accounts with Whip City Fiber, like the Horace Mann building has Whip City Fiber. Going into the school itself where all of the dorms are, they have some service with UMass currently. That's expiring this year, so we're looking to bid on it.
Are there any analytics run on your routers and Wi-Fi's?
As far as what you're surfing and what you're doing, no.
Exactly.
The only analytics we do is speed and community. That's it, yeah.
The only time we get involved is if any sort of FCC violations were committed, then we have to get involved with at a customer level.
So no downloading Metallica.
Of course.
No, yeah.
Bootlegging videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, someone was watching Mean Girls at a library, so we have to.
And the only time we get involved with that is if, the FBI comes and knocks on our door and says, what's happening, where is this IP address?
What about,
We provide that.
say for the end user right now, they have a mesh system and they can go on their phone and they can monitor their traffic, their bandwidth, who's on. Can you still do that with your systems? Like if I download an app, can I go in and look at my router data, my traffic, my connections and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's a login that you can change your Wi-Fi password and you can see who's connected.
Okay.
And
Like
then-
right now, I can look on my phone from here and see what's going on in my house,
Yeah, we have an app.
a web portal like that.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to say that. The other thing that we didn't mention, and we actually enrolled in it, is the Affordable Connectivity Plan, which is definitely a driving factor for those folks. So it's a $30 if they have the criteria, if they have SNAPS benefits. So that is something that we chose. It was an elective.
So is that low income and elderly
Yep,
if needed?
if they qualify for it.
Assistance.
It's
Assistance,
assistance,
okay.
so that really helps.
Yeah, two functions. One is Lifeline, and the other is this, it was the Emergency Broadband Benefit
Yeah.
Program. That's now changed over to
The
VC.
Yeah.
to this new program. So it went from $50 a month to $30 a month, but it's still available.
Okay.
So, and we
Will
were-
we be able to provide service for businesses as well? So businesses in the town like Great Horse or, you know, the nursing home or whatever?
Yep, so based on the level of service that they want, you know, so if you have, you know, there's a Casa Bella right here across the street, you know, they might want, you know, whatever the lowest 1 gig plan is. If you have something like Great Horse and they want to put up, you know, these Meraki wireless routers that can go throughout their whole facility. You know, I think our highest rate in Westfield for the largest commercial account we have is between $400 and $500 a month. But we also have, you know, extended, you know, special services to like Boys and Girls Club, things like that, where you know, they've got, you know, quite an enormous facility and multiple, I think they have like 14 or 15 of these Meraki access points, and they're only paying like $300 a month, but
They're using a lot of data.
they're using a ton because they have 300 something kids coming in every afternoon.
And
So
then we-
you're gonna wanna structure your commercial rates based on what you anticipate for, you know, users and usage based on your commercial.
But I was gonna say, whatever, I was gonna add, the complexity we do with Chris's guys and their help, campgrounds. So then there's public Wi-Fi for Laurel Ridge and Otis. And then also in Westfield, we have it downtown. So then the users downtown, they can log on. So we have the outdoor Merakis. And then even at Boland's Field for the Starfires. So we really have the expertise. We have many different departments from billing, customer service, design and engineering, IT. There's somebody there that has the expertise that we would get in contact for those businesses.
And do you see towns structuring business rates differently? Commercial rates or
Based on use.
based on?
Yeah, even residential rates. So the highest rate in the hill towns was 109 or 119.
115 for Halford.
Yeah,
And what are they getting for data speeds? What is that?
That's 1
by?
gig.
That's still 1 gig?
That's just 1 gig.
They just decided to set their monthly fee to the residents higher than
Oh,
some
oh.
of the others.
But their
They can afford it.
socioeconomic piece
Yeah.
is, they're one of the highest per capita income.
Which just justified all
communities
they can
in
afford it.
Massachusetts.
Their residential.
They
rate.
push this?
But then there's,
Alfred, Mass. Yeah, we have. The other side of Egremont.
Yeah.
but then if there's a doctor, they have a customer that's a doctor, so they charge a higher rate, depending on what they're sending, they're a radiologist. But really, you can monitor that. I know, in Charlotte, what's the Butternut, is it Butternut? No,
The ski resort.
There's a-
Berkshire-
there's a
Berkshire
large one,
Berkshire-
Berkshire
Berkshire,
East.
yeah.
So they're gonna, they had, when they have a camp going on, they have 2,000 users. So at that point, they're gonna set a seasonal rate.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have to increase their bandwidth, because at that point, they're gonna be.
For that time of
exceeding-
year.
Yeah,
So it comes down to what you see as the use case for customer.
Yeah, I would say you don't have a necessarily a, you know, huge commercial industrial
Right.
impact here. It's
Yeah, I think most, restaurants, facilities aren't gonna be overwhelmed.
right. But what we found in the hill towns is, you know, the one in Beckett, she actually spoke at an event we had the governor at. But she went from dial-up down there on the
Yeah.
corner there
Yeah.
to 1 gigabit. And she had customers when she was running their credit card, it would take up to 15 minutes to run a credit card this way.
Yeah.
So that you're looking at light years difference between, you know, Hampton and some of these other towns as far as right now. But now you're jumping into to that next rung.
but we would provide we refer to it as an onboarding document, and it's a questionnaire, so that it's based on the town of Hamden, and that's how we would build your website. And then going back to what Chris had mentioned, the design and engineering, then we can see exactly the premise planning report, how much it costs to serve each drop, so you can establish your policy.
Yeah, so in Westfield, like the area I was talking about earlier, we have multilingual marketing pieces. So it was going out in English, Russian, Ukrainian, and Spanish. So we have, you know, a lot of varying capabilities that where we've changed to fit the landscape. So I'm not sure what that landscape is here, you know, if it's, you know, primarily English speaking or whatever, but we do have capabilities if you know of, you know, alternative languages that are out there or primary languages, we can we can make those arrangements and also walk them through that process.
Okay,
Anything else we need to cover, or, I mean, there's been a lot of good answers, a lot of good questions.
One more question.
Good, Russell.
So let's say we round off everything 5.5 mil to get all this in, or whatever it is.
Looking at like
If
6.
you want to round it, we'll round it to 6.
Okay, so if we go to 6, and let's say we, we take rates 40%, how long does it take us to recover our investment?
Yeah, I can send you the, a full
Yeah,
measure.
that'd be
you know,
interesting. I
if
mean,
you want
I'd like
from,
to
you
see
know,
us.
Because we've
Move
got to
forward with more than-
maintain a 40% take rate through that year period. I mean, if other technologies come up, let's say, we fall to 35% take rate, well, now our time for payoff is obviously be extended.
So I think off their initial bond, it was a 20-year bond.
Correct.
20-year bond, estimating at a 50% take rate, but our break even, I'm gonna guess it's between 40 and 50, 45% would be a break even.
Yeah, I think it's down around 40.
Again, all good questions.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and you'll be able to identify some of that information based on the survey that you have. Based on what the, if you see that it's, everyone's starting to say, yes, they want it and stuff, you're gonna be in that area of, okay, we can do this, we can,
Right. Well, I was in the first 20 minutes, I was like, the take rate is key.
Yeah.
It's just-
Yeah, I know we talked about that,
Right.
off topic about it.
And I just want to add, like Brian mentioned, based on the demand in the fiber service areas, we can then, we can submit all the full applications, but then once you decide, so in parallel, you can do the marketing campaign. So then you can tell the utilities, I want you to go to this area first to do the make ready, then go to this area, then go to that area. So that's what we did in quite a few of the hill towns and in Westfield as well.
Would you recommend using the marketing campaign before the poll application and the make readies to kind of get a feel for the town's interest?
It's entirely up to,
I would do it after the poll, so the poll application is gonna be for the whole community. And then you can.
My
you
concern
have
with
plenty
that
of
is
time to do your marketing.
the poll application is so expensive.
Right.
If we do all the poll application and then we go do the marketing and surveying and it comes back at 20%. And then we're like, geez, we're really gonna have to front a lot of taxpayer money for it. Would it make sense to do the marketing first to get an idea of the interest?
it's almost a simultaneous.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to, in our world, there's no reason to wait on the polls.
Yeah.
Because it is the longest part of it. But as you're doing that, you can do, your marketing scheme and watch where it's going. So when that's ready, then okay, we're good. We're at 40%. We haven't even done any heavy lifting yet.
That's gonna be, your gamble buy-in is that initial 264,000 for the full poll application process.
Okay.
And then the key is just to get that going and get that done, because that's gonna take the longest time to get Verizon to get out there. National Grid has been more responsive and
You say 264,000?
I think the total,
So it wouldn't be the whole make ready then?
no.
Oh, I was assuming it was the
no.
1.6.
No, the
the
make- no,
1.6.
the full make ready is, so again, the first step is the full application process, then they come back to you with what here's the plan. You gotta change these, 150 poles coming down Main
I
Street.
got you. So the make ready after the fact is.
Yeah, so that's what you get out of the full application process is that initial buy-in, that's about 264,000, I think, on
Okay.
that. And then the utilities come back to you and says, this is what your cost is, and they go, pole by pole of where and what the work is.
Gotcha.
And then you say, okay, comes back to now Westfield G&E, that's where Katrina was saying, we send out one of our project managers, which, for the hill towns, we brought back, quite a few retirees. So they then, that were linemen, they go out and they do their own analysis, and they have the poll number, they have everything, it's all in GIS, so they know exactly where they're headed to. They go and look at that information, they look up, we have a measuring stick that they actually, has a hook on it, you pull it, and then it expands down. They measure the gaps to make sure that, okay, they're saying there's not a 52-inch gap. We measure up 12 inches, so that in the end, between the secondary for electric and our communication space, there needs to be 40 inches. So if there's not a 52-inch space, they're like, yes, that has to happen, but, you know, cable can move down, or Verizon can move down a couple inches. So it saves from changing out the pole. I know in quite a few neighborhoods in West Springfield, the poles were over 70 years old. You know, they still had all the climbing structure and the top of the poles rotted out. So the upside for West Springfield is we're gonna advocate on their behalf that you're not paying, you know, X hundreds of dollars for a new pole. They're gonna pay the pole, but you're still gonna have to pay, you know,
They've
the
got rigs they
attachment
gotta
cost.
follow.
What's that?
They've got rigs that they have to follow. They got.
Oh, as far as the
regulations.
spacing,
Yeah,
correct?
oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
so you definitely
absolutely.
got- You
Yeah.
kind of definitely is. there.
that's what
It's a
I'm
mess.
saying is the
It's a
upside.
mess out there, but
Right.
it's
The upside
there.
for us is we know and we know how to
Right.
work that pole to its
Yep.
full extreme. So if you know, driving down Main Street, you have quite a few newer looking poles, but if you look at the number of wires up there, it's like, you know, holy cow. But in the comp space, some of it may be fiber that the town owns or the regional school district owns, going from school to school.
Right.
So you may be able to utilize that and just latch on to that. So there's, if you look closely at the wires, you can see that there's a wire wrap that actually latches fiber or you know, communication to a steel wire.
That initial money we're talking about, the whole application.
Yeah.
I think you know better than me, but I'm pretty sure that's ARPA fund eligible.
Yeah.
That initial piece, so that,
Right.
that would be a great spot to use some of that in regards to.
I was
that first
misunderstanding
initial-
though, between the 1.6 and then
Right.
two.
Do part one first, and then.
Yeah, well, we're waiting for infrastructure money as well.
And
That
that's
whole
another piece.
legislation has a lot of money for broadband.
That's right.
We're waiting for the governor and the legislature to get it together and let us know what our allocation is.
Agreed.
Especially because you're
A lot of-
underserved.
A lot of people are waiting for that.
Yeah. We all set?
All right.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for Hamden because you're ahead of the game. There are many communities that are, you know, 6 months to a year behind where you're at. So that's-
Just want to hit, anybody online have any questions? I see Ted's got a.
No, I just sent the note, one of the upsides of the solar in town, at least on the west side, a lot of our poles are new on all the main roads because of the solar that went in, so. Hopefully, the tall poles are leaving enough room for the fiber to go in on all those new poles that went in.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anybody else online have any questions?
Okay.
Seeing none, I think we're good. I
Thank you
appreciate you
all.
guys, for everything that you've given to us and all this paperwork. Do you have digital copies of this stuff or should I just scan these?
No, we have digital.
Yeah, we can PDF.
I can send them on to the people that were online.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll get it off first thing tomorrow.
Bob, if there's any dollar amount